Hello, welcome to Queer Cinema Catchup. I'm Joe.
And I'm Allison.
And today is a very special episode because we're talking about the movie Female Trouble. And we also have special guest, Queen Coke Francis. Hello.
So, if you don't know who I am a very tired drag queen who talks about nerd shit forever on my YouTube channel, which is just Queen Coke Francis.
We're so glad to have you here.
Yeah, thank
and
you.
we connected with you through
Yes.
Casey, Sassy Grilled Cheese. We did an episode Freaky Friday with Casey.
You mean the goat?
Yes.
Yes.
You should check out his channel too, because he's really, really funny.
So when we connected with you, you brought up the movie Female Trouble as a possible Christmas movie option. As you notice, we've decorated for Christmas.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
I wish it was more of a Christmas movie. It was just like the first one that came to mind, and I'm like, I guess this is a Christmas movie. Like, I don't know if it's a Christmas movie so much as like Christmas is what like sets off the chain
Yeah.
of events. She doesn't get what she wants for Christmas, and it gets worse, is basically.
That's a really great sort of like log line for it. It gets worse.
I think that's how it's like. Dawn doesn't get cha-cha heels for Christmas, and it gets worse. That's about it.
I feel like it's like perfect because even like the way that Christmas is a part of it, and the way the tree kind of like, the tree gets knocked over, her mom gets crushed underneath it. It's sort of like, this is a Christmas movie, but it's not what you think when you think Christmas. And I feel like that kind of sums up the entire movie.
Not on Christmas, not on Christmas. Well, I'm so glad that you recommended it though, because
Okay, good.
I'll be honest, like John Waters is a huge blank space
Same.
in my film history knowledge, and he's very important
Yeah.
to not only just like queer, gay movie making, but just like filmmaking in general. And
Yeah.
I'm like somewhat familiar of Hairspray. I've seen Serial Mom, I love that movie.
That's a good one.
But as far as like all the Divine movies, like I really haven't seen them, so I'm really glad that you suggested this movie. And then if I can quickly go into John Waters' filmography, outside of just the ones that he's done with Divine. In 1964, Hag in a Black Leather Jacket. 1967, Roman Candles. 1968, Eat Your Makeup. 1969, Mondo Trasho. 1970, The Diane Linkletter Story. 1970, Multiple Maniacs. 1972, Pink Flamingos. 1974, Female Trouble. 1977, Desperate Living. 1981, Polyester. 1988, Hairspray. 1990, Crybaby. 1994, Serial Mom. 1998, Pecker. 2000, Cecil B. Demented. And lastly, 2004, A Dirty Shame.
You should definitely watch Polyester.
Okay.
Because I think Female Trouble was the second movie in
The trilogy.
in the Trash trilogy. So it's Pink Flamingos, then Female Trouble, then Desperate Living, which Divine was not in, and then after that was Polyester, which was kind of mainstream. It wasn't like as mainstream as like Hairspray, but it still got like a theatrical release and everything. And then it also had like the Smell-O-Vision gag. I went to a screening of this at the Academy Museum, and they had like the smell of it, or they call it odorama.
Yeah, they're gonna do
with,
that
like
for
scratch and sniff cards, and there's like a number that shows
great.
up on the screen.
They're gonna do that with
You scratch
Heretic.
a card. It's great.
What's your familiarity with John Waters, actually?
Yeah, so I would say very little. Like I've seen Hairspray and I know his name, I know what he looks like, and I kind of had a very vague sense of him as a filmmaker, but I too was very like out of the loop, and I feel like it's a huge blind spot for somebody who does want to pursue film and TV, you know what I'm saying? And
They don't talk about him in film school.
Yeah.
In one of my film history classes, there was one guy who did like because we all had to do like a presentation. I don't even remember what I did my presentation on, but he did a whole presentation on John Waters, and I was like, finally, someone gets it. Like, this guy knows what's up. Just like the one other gay person in the class, and I'm just like, we're gonna hang out after class. They don't talk about it in film school, which is a shame because like all art is valid.
yeah,
Even if it's bad, it's still valid. And like he was the first kind of like famous like transgressive queer filmmaker like that like broke into the mainstream, I guess. Like when Pink Flamingos came out, like they got a theatrical release, and like they had to hand out barf bags to people because like that was a problem that they had, and then it just became a thing, and that kind of gave him notoriety, and then he was able to like keep doing that. But I think that's kind of where like the crime and beauty thing kind of comes in, because it's like all press is good press, whether it's good or bad or positive or negative, you know.
All the way to the electric chair.
All the way to the electric chair. Like that was her goal.
Yeah.
Pretty much. Like she got what she wanted. She became famous. Like if anything, it's kind of a happy ending, even though she dies.
If you're in the character's point of view, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like if you don't talk about a piece of art, you're kind of missing out, and you're talking about art in general, it's like you're missing out on the full tapestry and how it's all in conversation with one another. And so that is why it's bad to not include filmography in in a film school curriculum or whatever, because something's lost and you're not really getting the full context, I'd say.
And then I'm pulling this out of my ass, but I wonder too if Tim Burton kind of overshadowed the cultural significance that John Waters has, or if Tim Burton kind of built off of what John Waters, because they both kind of like this kitschy filmmaking style, both influenced by like, feel like the 60s, 50s, that kind of stuff.
So my friends and I all went to see Beetlejuice, and we did like a roundtable discussion after it, and we put it up on my Patreon. And like we were talking about how Tim Burton has like this kind of obsession with what we call the lame 70s. Like just all like the lamest aspects of 70s, which makes sense because that's like when he was like a teenager and a young adult and everything. Because I wrote a lot of essays about Tim Burton in film school. Because Tim Burton was actually one of the reasons why I wanted to like go into film in the first place, because I grew up on his movies.
Yeah.
Hence, Batman Returns being my favorite Batman movie. Also, Michelle Pfeiffer was my first crush. But
Understandable.
Yeah.
Michelle Pfeiffer, and specifically Michelle Pfeiffer as Catwoman, changed something in me when I was 9. So he was very influenced by like German expressionism and like the Ray Harryhausen stop motion, Jason and the Argonauts, like that kind of. I'm blanking on all of the names of things. Sorry. And then John Waters, and this was actually the inspiration for the Odorama. He idolized William Castle growing up, the guy who made The Tingler. You'd go to see the movie and you would get like an electric shock in the seats. Yeah, like it was like a gimmick. It was gimmick filmmaking. So that was, and he was just like, I never wanted to sit in Santa's lap as a child. I wanted to sit in William Castle's lap. And I'm like, got it.
So there's some connective tissue.
Yeah.
And then.
Well, that's what I'm wondering. Yeah, does John Waters kind of pull from his own childhood, which comes more from like the 50s and growing up in the 60s? Kind of like, it's like it kind of feels like Tim Burton, like he kind of handed off the baton? Is that how you say that word?
Yeah, that's. I know you're saying.
I've seen like flies everywhere in this house. By the way,
Joe probably in his mind is dying.
If I get distracted, it's because I'm like looking at a fly that's flying around.
I mean, if anything, for a John Waters discussion,
it makes the most sense.
It was intentional. We invited the fly to come inside.
Yeah. The Pope of Trash
all the filth
coming in. Well, should we go into the synopsis of the movie?
Yeah. Do you want to read it this time? I feel like I was reading it.
Wait, and actually, I really want to. What's the inspiration for your drag queen name?
So it had been a name that was kind of like floating around in my head for a while, and then during the pandemic, I started practicing drag and experimenting with it, like just out of boredom. I tried starting a YouTube channel like a little while after I graduated college, and it didn't really go anywhere. And I was doing it like as myself, as my real name, and in retrospect, it's like I was pretending to be somebody else. I was just making content that like I thought would like gain traction because other people were doing it. I decided to make a new channel with this name and doing it in drag, and it's like, oh, I feel more like I might like myself than I ever have. Like I don't feel like I'm pretending to be somebody else, even though I have 10 pounds of makeup on my face. Weirdly.
I love drag, but I'm like honestly not that familiar with like Drag Race and all that stuff, but I just like I've heard before too, it's like it's an expression, like even though people like are putting on a character, they feel like more realized of who they are themselves and going into this.
A different viewpoint. So my senior thesis film was about drag queens. It was like a comedy drama musical, sort of music. There was one original musical.
It counts.
that they played like 2 or 3 times throughout it. So one of the leads, he had always wanted to try drag, and so he was like really excited to try it for this because he's like, oh, I've always wanted to. So he tried. It turned out he hated it. He absolutely hated being in drag, and he said something that stuck with me, and I've been thinking about it for so long. as we're getting this poor guy into a corset, he was saying, you know, like, as a gay man, I thought that drag would like help me become more in touch with my feminine side. But if anything, I feel more like a man in drag than like I ever have in my life, because you become like hyper aware of your like masculine features, I think. I have not been able to stop thinking about that for all these, this is like 2017 or something.
Yeah.
I think that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, just being hyper aware of who you are or how the world perceives you, maybe, and stepping into another role, but then also having it be an avenue to expression. It's kind of like an interesting, like, dichotomy or tension that is cool, is really cool, and like, yeah, I can see why it stuck with you, I guess.
Yeah, and I had never heard that viewpoint before.
I mean, the amazing thing about like the queer community itself too, we always talk about there's like so much like diversity within it too, is that everyone has different experiences. All right, should we launch into the synopsis?
Yeah, sorry. This is the downside of having me as a podcast guest. You will get sidetracked.
I'm a big sidetrack.
I think it's important and necessary.
I'll jump on the train
the sidetrack
and go down
train.
the sidetrack.
All right. Female Trouble is a transgressive black comedy film directed by John Waters. It follows the wild, chaotic, and outrageous life of Dawn Davenport, played by Divine, a troubled teen who grows into a rebellious, criminal adult. After being rejected by her conservative parents for her unruly behavior, Dawn embarks on a series of criminal exploits, leading to a descent into violent acts and a final embrace of fame, infamy, and self-destruction. The film explores themes of celebrity, vanity, and societal rejection, with Waters' signature dark humor and campy style. It's a satire on the lengths people go for attention, beauty, and acceptance, often through grotesque or absurd means. And then I'll just end this by saying the movie is a cult classic and is known for its offbeat characters, which is an understatement, its bizarre and surreal plot, and its exploration of gender, identity, and the exploitation of fame. It's also one of the quintessential examples of Waters' brand of trash cinema, known for pushing the boundaries of taste and decency.
That went hard.
Yeah, it's like a great way to like summarize just how, again, like the importance of like John Waters and his movies on film history, not just queer cinema.
Queer cinema is film history. I'm so boldly going to claim.
Yes.
No, you're right.
Yeah.
You are so right. Because something I realized when I had to like rewatch this movie over and over again, and this isn't supposed to be an insult, but I don't think a straight person could have made this movie.
I don't think so.
Not that straight people can't like do camp or anything, but like this is a gay product. Like only a gay person could have made this specific movie.
Yeah.
There's no way a straight person could have.
1974.
I know.
Yeah.
I
The
was thinking
scenes
about
with
that.
Aunt Ida, is that?
Ida, I think.
Aunt Ida. Aunt
Oh my
Ida.
God.
Aunt Ida.
Edith Massey, absolute legend. Apparently, that black
Oh,
pleather
yeah,
dress
yeah.
that she wears, apparently it took 3 people to get her into that suit.
Oh my gosh.
I
did notice it.
She ate
She
it.
did. When she was like up there dancing, I was like amazed, because that's like one of the first scenes is it her nephew? He's like, Aunt Ida, go Aunt Ida, go Aunt Ida.
Oh my God, and his whole thing is so genius because it takes the thing that so many queer and trans people had to hear growing up, where it's like, I wish you could just find a nice girl to settle down with. But it's in reverse this time.
Yes.
So Aunt Ida's just like, you work at the hair salon. There's so many nice boys at the salon. I wish you would just. It's like, the world. I think the world of heterosexuals is a sick and boring life. I'm like, oh my God.
Well, and then
a good quote.
to add a layer onto that made me even more impressed is like they could have just stopped it there. But then for the nephew, his reaction isn't negative.
No.
He's like, no, I love gay people. I love queer people. He's like, I'm just not attracted to the equipment. That's what he says. Like totally just like, they're all just having in like 1974.
Yeah.
Like this like relationship between them talking like queer discussion, and they both just normalize it.
Oh yeah.
So you go like saying that like only like a gay person can make this movie, a queer person can make this movie, I completely agree with, especially at that time. Which now, I don't even think, this is an anniversary. This movie came out in 1974.
Oh my gosh.
What is it?
Before 94,
50?
2004?
It's the 50th anniversary.
Oh my God. Y'all.
We didn't mean for
We didn't
this to
plan for this.
happen.
I should have had balloons fall down from the
We did the
sky.
Christmas decorations and throw a party.
It's the anniversary party.
Happy birthday.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
There's one aspect of it, it's like, this is actually the most horrifying thing that could possibly happen. And here we are laughing our asses off at it because it's also just like so ridiculous and so tasteless that it just becomes funny. Even though it's like, if this happened in real life, it's like, oh my God, put this person away for
Yes.
life.
I like you using the descriptor tasteless because I feel like that's a great
100%.
description that describes this
Extremely.
movie. Is like you just realize how insensitive and awful this all is, but you can't help but just like laugh at a lot of it just because it's so
so
absurd
ridiculous.
and
Yeah.
ridiculous.
So like
Yeah.
heightened.
It's like the movie starts out with Dawn in like high school. They all have their like 60s bouffants.
I loved the high school
And the
part.
movie ends with Dawn having a shaved head, being electrocuted to death on the chair, and then the credits roll. It's like if you were just like at the beginning shot and the ending shot's like, well, how did we get here?
Yeah.
And then before that, she had a mohawk. Before mohawks were cool. Like, she was doing punk before punk was like a big, because punk started roughly around that time, but she was still doing that before.
So one thing that struck me after I finished watching the movie was I didn't realize that John Waters had done pretty much everything, like produced, directed, screenwriter, cinematographer, co-editor, and even penned the lyrics to the opening theme song of the movie. Like, I was like, oh my gosh, that's incredible. And then I found this quote from an article, which I thought I had copied down the link so I could read the author's name, but I did not.
Really quick, while you brought up, it was in your video that I discovered that Divine actually had like a whole like music career.
Yeah.
Oh, wait,
Yeah.
let's
Like a
talk about that
successful
first.
career
He has a
outside
whole-
of.
He had a whole disco album, and it kind of rips, I'm not gonna lie. And then he also like put out some punk songs, which is awesome because he has like the perfect voice for that. Just look up Divine Born to Be Cheap. It's such a banger.
Okay. He performed that one on Letterman, is that right?
Yep.
That's wild that Divine was on Letterman.
Oh yeah, David Letterman's pretty chill actually.
Okay.
I love disco, so now I'm very excited to check out.
Divine.
Yeah.
Look it up. Those of you watching. Divine might be the most punk rock person who's ever lived.
Yes.
Like, it's his performance on Letterman. I'm like, this is the most punk rock thing I've ever seen in my life.
Was he sporting the mohawk on Letterman too? I'm trying to
No,
remember.
I think he just had like that big white wig.
Well, and also with Divine too, it sounded like at the time that they were making these movies in like the early 70s, is there was a whole drag scene, but, and this is coming from John Waters, he was saying that a lot of them were like performing like beauty pageants.
Yeah.
Whereas like Divine purposely was going like the opposite direction of
Yeah.
just being this like grotesque, just like John Waters described him as like when they were designing Divine, they pictured Divine just being like Godzilla, just like tearing through the city.
Yes, actually, and there was a quote about that used Godzilla meets, where'd it go?
And then just the importance, like, yeah, you're saying that Divine might be the most punk rock person to have ever existed. And then his influence probably on not only drag, but like in other forms of entertainment. I think you mentioned on your channel too, just how Ursula from The Little Mermaid.
Okay. Like, that's not even a theory. Like, Disney animators have directly said that Divine was their inspiration for Ursula, which it's like, yeah, tracks.
And then what were you about to say about?
Oh, I was just gonna read this quote, and I don't know. I feel bad I didn't write down the author's name of the article. It says, Waters himself is the best part of any John Waters movie. His influence from behind the camera is the only reason I keep coming back to his stuff. He writes dialogue that sounds so strange, so out there, and I feel like I've missed half of his jokes the first time I went through the film. His directing style is also very unique. Most of the actors in this film, if not all of them, are not professionally trained actors. They're just people Waters knew, and he turned them into stars.
So his collaborators and all the actors that he worked with, unfortunately, I think all of them have died.
Whoa.
Except for Mink Stoll, and she's still working and doing stuff. But other than that, like, I think oh my God, I think all of them have died. But they were called the Dreamlanders because it was Dreamland Productions, and they were pretty much like at some point like homeless or
Wow.
drug addicts. I think shortly after Female Trouble premiered, David Lochary, one of the Dashers, the guy who like everything he says sounds like it's going to be written in stone, you know.
Yeah,
Yes.
I loved that one.
He very unfortunately passed away from a PCP overdose after, which
Wow.
is gnarly. I know Edith Massey passed away. Divine passed away like right after the success of Hairspray, which is really
I saw
It's
that.
really tragic.
I saw that. It's really sad.
Because like a bit prior to Hairspray, Divine was trying to find acting work, not as Divine, but as Glenn Milstead, his real name. And he was having trouble doing that because they're like, oh, aren't you the guy who ate dog shit in Pink Flamingos? No ill will to John Waters or anything, but he was like kind of super depressed for a long time because he wasn't able to be taken seriously as like an actor. And then he was in Hairspray, and then Hairspray was huge, launched both of them in the mainstream. And then he finally landed the lead in, I don't know if it was a movie or a series. And then the first day of shooting, he had died in his hotel room.
Of a heart attack.
Yeah.
That's so
'Cause
tragic.
He was a big dude.
Yeah. John Waters mentioned that Divine had been cast in Married with Children.
Yeah.
And was supposed to be in the episode the next day and died
That's
beforehand.
what it was. Okay.
Which it adds to the tragedy, like, of course, him dying, tragic, but then, like, too, you saying that he was, like, struggling to find work just because he was so extreme. Like, how do you, if your role starts out with you eating, like, dog shit, like, where is there for you to go? You start
you've
pretty
already
extreme.
peaked.
Yeah.
It doesn't get better than that.
It's so
It's all downhill from there.
It's so sad to hear him be cast. I didn't realize that he was gonna be so. I thought he was just like guest starring in the show, but it sounds like he might have had a like recurring role in Married with Children.
Yeah, supposedly he got like a big role in it or something.
And so that's so sad because Married with Children is such an important like milestone in like Fox and like
That's a big
TV
deal.
history, and so that would have like helped bring him more into the mainstream. So it's just so sad that happened.
Rest in power.
Yeah, rest in power. And him and John Waters have known each other. I think I heard this from your video that you were talking that you had done on Female Trouble, is that they were like childhood friends. They'd known each other forever.
Yeah.
And so it sounds like John still just on Mark Maron's podcast was saying like, yeah, I still have a hard time. Like,
Oh yeah,
sad.
you never get over that.
yeah. And John, I mean, he grew up in Baltimore. This was filmed in Baltimore.
All of his movies take
All of his movies take place in Baltimore. He still lives in Baltimore.
Yeah. I
love that.
He loves it. I'm pulling from Mark Maron's podcast again, but he
No,
said
it's true.
he was like, I love Baltimore. He's like, and I love living here. He's like, but I can't understand people who moved to Baltimore who didn't grow up here.
He's not wrong.
You know, it's really funny you say that because I just saw my friend from Maryland posted like, with the election, a lot of people are saying I'm going to move to like Maryland or like Baltimore area, and don't do it. I live here and I love it, but just don't come. You won't like it. That's really weird that you said that. Yeah, it must be something. I've been to Baltimore. I don't know.
Secret.
It's a good place to visit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I want to quickly go into, just because John Waters and Divine have such like rich histories, I want to read bios on both of them really quick. So John Waters is an American filmmaker, writer, and artist, often referred to as the Pope of Trash, which less than a year ago, I noticed all these signs all over the city with like, it said like Pope of Trash, like advertisements for it, for some like showing at the Academy Museum. And I had no idea that Pope of Trash was attached to John Waters.
Yeah.
So they had like a whole, I don't know if it's still going on now, but
I think
then,
it's over now, but
yeah, to be labeled like the Pope of Trash is like very fitting, and John Waters seems to embrace it.
I have a cool John Waters story for you guys, but we can save that until the end because I don't want us to get sidetracked again.
I mean, while it's fresh in your mind,
Yeah,
though,
go for
you might
it.
as well I can always place the list later in the
I mean,
video, too.
it was one of the best days of my life, and I think about it all the time, so I'm sure I'll remember it.
Okay. Waters became a pioneer of trash cinema, as I mentioned before, a genre that deliberately flouts conventional taste. His best-known works include Pink Flamingos, 1972, Hairspray, 1988, and Cry Baby, 1990. But I like how it skipped over Female Trouble. And what was the last movie in the trilogy?
Desperate Living. Desperate Living is arguably the most messed up one. I don't know why. That was the one that like not like got under my skin, but I'm like, oh, this is like really messed up. Yeah, I only saw it once, and I remember it being like my least favorite of the trash trilogy, and I was like, and it's also the only one without Divine.
Okay.
So I'm just like,
A neurotic society woman murders her husband with her maid's help.
yes, that,
They escape to Mortville, a homeless community ruled by a fascist queen.
yes.
A fascist queen.
It has a higher budget because I forgot we should have mentioned that this movie was made for $25,000.
Oh, yeah, where does it say that?
Right there, I wrote it down.
It's like in bold at the very top of Allison's sheet.
But then Desperate Living was made for $65,000.
Which is pretty low.
Yeah.
Even for that time.
That was another interesting thing that all the locations were like, that was a real prison, that was a real church where the wedding scene took place, that he sort of just kind of went up and asked people, can we film in here? And they would say yes, or it would be people's homes that they knew. And
Yeah.
so that, I think, adds to it. It feels like you're...
Also, it's
I
like
don't know.
probably not paying the act. It's John Waters and like all of his homeless and or drug addict friends just making movies together.
Yeah,
So
having-
it's like you save a lot on costs when people are just kind of working for free.
And having
I don't
fun.
see it as working for free. They were all just kind of like having fun making movies
Yeah.
together.
Yeah.
So
That's...
The most important part about filmmaking that some people
Or
forget. when they're- Yeah, or
podcasting.
podcasting. Yeah. Were there any plot points, if there's any moments that like stood out? We mentioned a little bit about Aunt Ida and her nephew and how like forward thinking they were for that time.
Oh yeah. So also, I don't know why the part where Gaynor leaves and she's just like rolling on the floor screaming is
that
like
part.
one of the funniest things ever to me. I always every single time I laugh
I
so
did laugh
hard
at that
no
part,
sound
too.
comes out. I don't know why that's so funny. I laugh at the stupidest shit.
How could I forget that her nephew's name is Gator? What
Yeah.
a great name.
It really
There's
fit
a
him.
lot to remember about the movie.
Yeah.
So much is happening in any one given scene. So much is being said and shouted that you're kind of like, oh.
And I love it too, just Gator specifically because his accent, I imagine some type of like Baltimore accent, like where he curls all his vowels. Like I don't even know how he does it. Like, Aunt Ida, like this is so, it's such a strange accent.
Wait, you nailed it
Yeah,
though. That's
like curling
Actually,
everything
I've never
in.
heard Joe say that
I
today.
have
Oh my God.
I've been practicing all day.
it's very, the Baltimore accent is very specific.
Yeah.
Like, it's not a Southern accent, but it's not a New England accent.
It's almost like a Southern California surfer accent combined.
Yeah.
Yeah, but were there any, like, we talked a little bit too at the beginning of the movie. It starts out with Dawn, like, in high school in the 60s, and Allison and I were talking about the movie beforehand, and Allison's like, it's very extreme, but it kind of reminded you of...
What did it rhyme? Oh, well, yeah, okay, so when I started the movie, I didn't look up anything in advance, so I really didn't know what to
Good.
expect. And I turned it on, and the beginning, in the high school setting, it was an all-girls, I assume, like, Catholic school, or, like, and I went to an all-girls Catholic school, and just the
Nice.
way that, you know, Dawn and her friends are acting, they're kind of, like, positioned outside of the, like, good students who are cool and who are like, you know, she's eating in class, you know, being really rude, and then they're kind of, they have this like perspective on it, and they have this way of speaking that it really kind of did remind me of my high school, where there was kind of a, like an edge to some people who were like, oh, this place, you know, is ridiculous, and
Yeah, it was
I
one
really
of 'em.
appreciated that. So then I texted Joe, and I was like, LOL, this is hilarious. And then I was still laughing during the Christmas tree scene, where she didn't get her cha-cha heels, and then I suddenly understood what I was in for with what happened next. So I texted Joe, and I was like,
Some of the more tasteless things that happen in the movie.
So you know who played the truck driver, right?
Is it him?
yeah.
Divine having sex with himself.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which is so fitting for the character of
It was so
Divine.
funny.
Yeah.
God damn it. I don't know why it's so funny to me.
But what were you saying? What were you like in
Oh,
high
yes.
school?
I'm sorry, I did not hear you.
Oh, I was just, you know, this place sucks. But also, like, I love the fact that, like, they stayed friends.
Yeah.
Me too.
She had so many friends that she loved and they loved her back. Like when she was at the hospital and
It's like
unwrapped
whole-
her face as she got acid thrown in it. And she's surrounded by all these friends and loved ones. I'm like, is she an anime protagonist? How does she have this many friends? Oh my God.
And I feel like in certain scenes, there's sort of like a homage to different kind of genres, or,
Oh yeah.
but like then you just, it's like a funhouse mirror of it where it's not what you would expect.
I mean, the Bildungsroman genre is like most Dickens novels.
Yes, I was an English major and I read many Dickens novels and talked about the Bildungsroma all the time, so I'd love to hear more about that.
Bildungsroman follows the psychological spiritual growth of a character from youth to adulthood. And so this is a perversion of the genre because Donnelly grows more unhinged and immoral as the story goes on. And yes, I successfully compared female treble to Miss Charles Mary Dickens. And then by the end, she's a hideous maniac who performs lewd acts on stage and laughs as she guns down her audience. In jail, she talks about her execution as if it's the culmination of her artistic career, and she gives what might as well be an Oscar acceptance speech from the electric chair. Her descent into madness is, to her, an ascension. She got what she wanted. She became famous. If anything, it's a happy ending. Again, just remember, literally all of this happened because she didn't get cha-cha heels for Christmas.
Yeah, the perversion of a genre. I feel like that's what's going on here, and I really like that.
That's his thing.
The two characters, I forget their name.
The Dashers.
Well, the Dashers.
Yeah.
They really like pump up Divine, be like, you are the next big thing. We will like make you into a famous celebrity. Like you're gonna be successful. You're an artist. You mentioned too in the hospital, like they get like unwrapped and everyone's like, oh my gosh, you're gorgeous, you're beautiful. And like meanwhile, like all these like burns on Divine's
it
face.
is horrifying to look at. But everyone else is so supportive, like, no.
Yeah.
They're like, oh God, you look beautiful.
Yeah. But then one interesting aspect is when they go to court and the Dashers turn on Divine. And I'm wondering what it's saying about like celebrity and
Well, I think my interpretation of that is, so when there is a figure that is outrageous and we're like looking at it for entertainment or looking at it as a symbol of fame, whatever it might be, and there are the people that are encouraging it or putting money into it, and then the second it goes too far and they're like, oh no, that wasn't us. That was you, the outrageous individual. And so it's like, it's kind of, I think, like a metaphor for society and how we react to, how we feed off of controversy and grotesque behavior until it becomes something that people want to criticize, and then we're like, oh, we didn't want to look. It wasn't us. It was that one grotesque, crazy thing.
Yeah.
And not me, myself, and I. Mm-hmm. That's what I think was going on.
So the Dashers, when Dawn's doing all these outrageous things and they're really like pumping Divine up, do they truly believe that it's like artistic and something that should be appreciated and then they're ashamed afterwards, or did they always think it was like grotesque and wrong?
I think it was like a fetish thing.
Okay.
And then of course, like when confronted about it in public, they're gonna deny it.
Yeah.
The same way how all the most transphobic people in government watch trans pornography.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking about
maybe do I have a section about this? Hang on. Let me see. Okay, so I do have a thing about this. I hope it's cool that I'm reading off of my phone so that I sound a lot more eloquent than if I'm like the fucking.
You absolutely read off your phone.
The connection between crime and celebrity is central to John Waters' work. His characters make no distinction between fame and infamy. To them, notoriety is aspirational. Bad press is the only press worth having. Pink Flamingos was a film literally about people competing to be the filthiest people alive. But Female Trouble actually explores the larger social concerns that inspire this sentiment. There's a dedication in the film's credits to Charles Tex Watson, a murderer and central member of the Manson family. Waters later regretted this dedication, saying that he did it, quote, without the slightest feeling for the victims' families. Still, in a way, Waters was simply reflecting what was going on around him in the early 70s. The Manson murders and the subsequent trial was a media circus. Tabloid culture didn't care about Sharon Tate's bereaved family, and no one gave a damn about the vulnerable young girls Manson had brainwashed and abused. People were shocked and disgusted, but in a way, they were also entertained, and that sentiment holds true to this day.
Yeah. In watching it, I was like, oh my gosh, so much is happening, and
there's a lot going on.
It's like freaking me out, but I can see that it has something to say.
Yeah.
And so therefore I'm more inclined to be like, that was good. Whereas if I felt like there was no point behind it and it was just like a parade of
but like you can
offensive things.
See that because you look at things critically.
I try.
I mean, a lot of people don't. Like they just see it on the surface and they just see like horrible things happening and they don't actually take the time to like think about what does this imply, what does this say about culture
what's the why
in general and culture in the 70s specifically, you know?
What was the detail with the Dashers injecting Divine with liquid eyeliner?
We were debating
that's
that.
Just a gay thing.
Well, Joe was asking me, he was like, is it supposed to be like code for heroin? But I'm like, kind of like, why wouldn't they just do it?
I think it was just funny. Super unrelated. One of my Twitch alerts is when Divine goes, Jesus Christ almighty!
Speaking of that too, just like the cadence that Divine has, just like you cannot look away from him. Amazing like look and just like the confidence. I think you talk to you about the body positivity in this movie too,
Truly.
and just how Divine like owns it. Even Aunt Ida, like they all just like embrace this.
John Waters has always been super body positive because, like, when he was first writing Hairspray, like, the first thing that he knew was that he wanted the protagonist to be a fat girl who also gets the guy in the end. That never happens. When else has that happened?
Yeah.
Bridgerton, kinda, sorta.
With Bridgerton, there was so much like discussion about that. That shows you how rare it is because it shouldn't really be that big of a deal. And the fact that we're still talking about that so much
Yeah.
in 2024, it's
50
kind of
years
like,
later.
I guess we haven't had
50
enough.
year-
That is still so crazy to me.
And speaking back to Hairspray also, John Waters, he was talking about Hairspray in terms of the fact that it got a PG rating. And initially the studio reached out to him and was like, throw in a swear word so it becomes PG-13. And John Waters was like, actually, no, I want to keep it PG because people will go into this movie, will get a wider audience, and that'll be slipping in these like important like
Yeah.
messages, body positivity, drag, like all these like elements, interracial relationships too, like all of that
Yeah.
in there is like important to see.
Like,
And embracing the change of the times. I think that is a huge theme of it too.
yeah, because John Waters is like, I think in his like late 70s. So like during the time that he was
Yeah.
like coming of age was like segregation ending, and like there weren't really a whole lot of movies that really talked about it, especially movies that like didn't take like a comedy angle with it, because like the movie is still very much like a comedy, but it also has a lot to say about the end of segregation at the time and the amount of people who like did not want that to happen. And a lot of those people are still alive and they vote.
Yeah.
My mom is Hispanic. She wasn't allowed to use public pools until she was like 7.
Oh my God.
It's just like wild for you two that you like such a close attachment to like your parents having these experiences, like to not be that far removed.
Weird.
And yeah, we keep bringing about female troubles like 50 years away, and like in a way it feels like a lot of time has passed, and then in other ways it feels like not much has freaking changed.
Yeah.
Like in schools, nothing has changed except the teachers can't hit you anymore.
Yeah.
Like that's the only thing that's changed.
I mean, yeah, I think that's true. Like,
Probably the fly.
Oh, did you get him?
No.
ugh.
If you were responsible for college students and required them to watch a
great
John
question.
Waters movie, which movie would you assign?
Female Trouble.
Okay.
I'd probably show them Pink Flamingos actually as like an introduction, because it's like this is like what he's most known for, or was before Hairspray. And then here's the second movie in this trilogy. How does this differ narrative-wise? It's like it follows a traditional narrative structure.
Yeah.
I think that's so interesting is like Hairspray obviously is an extremely mainstream movie. It's like to put themes in the film that are still transgressive or kind of making you think outside of the status quo. And only someone who can make films like Female Trouble would maybe be able to somehow do both.
Yeah.
I think that's really cool.
Well, he has like a really interesting perspective on the world that like most people do not have. Like he just very calmly embraces any kind of chaos. And that's just how it goes through life. And that's honestly really inspirational to me, because it's like, okay, will you embrace the chaos when it comes, or will you like
Let it knock you
fold
down.
under it and
Yeah.
let it, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's not going away, so you might as well like make the most of it. I
Lean
don't
into
know.
it.
Yeah.
Hearing you say how inspired you are of John Waters to really embrace the chaos, maybe now is a good time to share your John Waters story.
Okay. This was during when I was making my drag queen senior thesis film. 2017, a friend of mine, they also love John Waters, and so for their birthday I was like, hey, John Waters is doing a book signing in West Hollywood.
Cool.
For your birthday, I will buy you a copy of the book, and we will both go to this meet and greet with John Waters. I think it was at Circus of Books in West Hollywood.
Yes.
And we were in line for like 2.5 hours. Oh my God. We just made it before, like there were only a few people behind us who managed to get in. As we got closer, the reason it took so long to get to him was because he took the time to talk to every single person in line. Like he could have just been like, thank you, next, or whatever. Like, no, he took the time to get to know every person. So we finally go up. You know, I'm punked out. My friend is gothed out. They're the one with like all the tattoos and piercings. And the first thing John says to us is, oh, do you guys get compliments when you dress like that? Do you get stares? And my friend's like, kind of a mixture of both. And he's just like, I saw a lot of people like you on the set of Pink Flamingos. And I'm like, what the fuck is happening? What is happening? So I actually like had the opportunity to tell him like, I'm making a movie about drag queens right now. You're one of my biggest influences. Your movies and your philosophy on life has like gotten me through like a lot of really hard times. And I started getting very emotional and like crying a little bit. And I'm like, this is so embarrassing. But he was very polite. He was like, oh, thank you, And then we took pictures with him and then we left. And then I went to the bathroom to continue crying. And then I got out and I'm like, this is top 5 days of my life easily. John's a really cool dude. That's mostly where I was going.
Yeah.
I can personally attest. And again, it wasn't just with us. He did that we saw it happen. He was just like making friends with everybody. So
I mean, the fact that you were making a movie at the time and he attaches you both to Pink Flamingos, it like has to be surreal. Like I'm meeting him in person. You're at Circus of Books, which is another famous location. Like it's all that has to be. What an amazing experience.
Also, he had the sickest jacket. I don't
love a good
remember
jacket.
what the pattern was because I had never seen it before, but I'm like, that is the sickest jacket I've ever seen. But anyway, that's my awesome John Waters story.
It's wonderful to hear that it seems like he stayed true to himself, just because it sounds like in making these movies too, he's like pulling people from different walks of life and all over Baltimore, and the fact that he's like able to like take the time with people he's meeting in West Hollywood and have such a personable experience with them to this day. I think it's like really impressive and a testament to just how wonderful he is.
Oh, also, when I was in film school, one of my mentors was Ann Beats, who was one of the original SNL writers and one of the original National Lampoon writers, and everybody hated her, and she hated everybody. For some reason, we got along. I don't know how it happened. Somehow, I got lucky. We just got along really well. And so apparently she had directed a series, a very short-lived series that he had. I think it was called Movies That Will Corrupt You or something. She's like, so every time somebody comes into his house in Baltimore, he takes a Polaroid of you and then he puts it in his basement. So there's a Polaroid of me and like a ton of other people somewhere in John Waters' basement.
That's wild.
And he still sends her a Christmas card every year. I think that's cool.
I'm like, should we start doing that? And we don't have a basement.
One scene that we touched on briefly that I'd be remiss if we missed out on is this movie's leading to this like performance that Divine's gonna give at that like performance hall with like a huge audience. And Divine's like running around like doing these like dance moves and everyone's like applauding. And then Divine pulls out a gun. What does Divine say? That who wants to die?
Who wants to die
for fame, art? For art?
So
Someone said me.
Yeah.
So a fun fact about that. So that was actually based off of a real live show that Divine did, where she would just like hurl mackerels at people, and then claim to have committed a bunch of famous crimes. Like that was an act.
Yeah, there were fish on the
act.
stage. I feel like we didn't say that in the scene.
Oh, there were.
Yeah.
That was actually something that he did in a real life show. He would hurl mackerels at the audience and then claim
to do famous crimes. So for that scene, it's just like the ridiculous insanity of like, who wants to die for art? Someone's like, me, and then Divine shoots the person, and the audience like screams because he's just murdered, which leads to him going to prison and eventually getting the electric chair.
Yeah.
But another funny element in this movie is Divine starts going on crime sprees with Divine's like high school friends.
Chiclet and Cornchetta.
Yeah.
And then like when Divine meets the
Dashers.
The Dashers. One of them casually asks like, "And do you still do crime?" And then like Divine just like casually is like, "Yes, I still do crime." Like, it's so funny. The like ridiculous like chaos of it was just really. This movie's just insane, and what a tasteless treat to watch.
Truly. Also, another fun fact, when she was running from the cops and like was swimming in that lake, somehow she did that without her wig coming off in one take, and I was so impressed.
What a balancing act.
All the stunts. we're
Yeah.
done.
Divine.
Yeah, by Divine. So
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Well, Frances, thank you so much
Yes,
for joining
thank
us today
you
for this
for
episode on
having me.
female trouble and for sharing Christmas time with us during the holiday
Yes,
season.
yes.
Where can our listeners and viewers find you?
Mainly YouTube.
Woo.
And I also stream on Twitch on weekends, Saturdays or Sundays. I'm on Instagram, I am on TikTok, but YouTube is where I make the most of my money.
What would you say is your favorite video that you've worked on?
I very politely infiltrated a right-wing dating app.
Oh my
I
god.
saw that one.
Okay.
Yeah, that is wild.
Okay. Yeah, that was fun.
This is Queer Cinema Catchup. I'm Joe.
I'm Allison.
And thank you, Frances, for joining
Yes,
us
thank you so
once
much.
again.
Oh my god, thank you.
I now want to cheers, but I don't have anything.
Cheers!